Welcome, everybody. This is a meeting of the Committee of the Whole of the Municipality of the County of Annapolis. December the 14th, I believe it is. I see there's a few Christmas outfits around the table this morning, and that's in a good spirit. Start with the roll call. District 1.
Bruce Prew.
District 2.
Brian Fuzzy-Connell.
District 3 is myself, Alan Parrott. District 4.
Clark Bartle.
District 5.
Lynn Longmire.
District 6.
Alec Morrison.
District 7.
David Hudson.
District 8.
Michael Young.
District 9.
Wendy Sheridan.
District 10.
Fred Redden.
And District 11.
Diane LeBlanc.
Thank you very much. Are there any disclosures of interest on anything on the agenda this morning? Councillor Hudson.
Yes. Which section is it? 6. Oh, 6.4. I'm a member of that association.
Okay, the Max Young Reserve. Okay, we'll keep that in mind as we get there. You all have the agenda as circulated for the Committee of the Whole. Are there any additions or corrections with respect to the agenda? Councillor Hudson.
Yes. Should we be at this time setting a date for a special CO Committee of the Whole meeting for the Bridgetown Community Tech, right?
We intend to have one in January, I believe. Do we need to set it today, or is the idea that it meets everybody's convenience on your schedule? Is that?
Well, I was just wondering if we should schedule one, or whether we just leave it up to
Can you
Mr.
tell
Dick.
us when you intend to schedule that?
We have, I think Carolyn, is it 3 separate meetings that we want to have special Committee of the Wholes for in January? Bridgetown being one of them?
There is on item 6.15, it's to set a January date for our special committee of the whole, currently to discuss, that's one meeting, to discuss 3 topics: fire services, accessibility, and Raven Haven.
Right, but we want
So that just include the Bridgetown rate in that one.
Okay, so I think we're going to have a special meeting just for Bridgetown. So can we add that to the agenda
You
then?
just do it when you're setting a date for special committee of the whole.
We can do that. So we'll add to the agenda on 6.15 also date for Bridgetown Committee of the Whole.
Special committee of the whole Bridgetown area, right?
Yeah. Any other additions to the agenda or changes? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote to approve the agenda as circulated. Moved by Councillor LeBlanc, seconded by Councillor Redden. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion's carried. The adoption of the Committee of the Whole minutes from November the 9th, 2021, as circulated. Any comments in that regard? I don't see any. It's fairly long. I'm just turning the pages myself as I speak. I don't have any changes myself. I don't see any from council members, so I'll call for a vote approving the minutes. Councillor Bartow?
Just one question on page 10, 152. On the
Let's,
motion for the Cotw project,
can you just, yeah,
we were making motions and voting to go ahead with that $60,000 item for 2 years. This says 60 to 65. It's I don't think it should be variable. And then I was in the other information in the package that actually goes more than that. So that's not what we voted on, was that amount, just, whether it makes a difference or not, it should be rectified.
If I may.
Yeah, go ahead.
This captures what happened at that time, at that meeting. The information may have changed in subsequent meetings, or it may have been different in meetings before. This is reflecting that meeting at that time.
Okay, so we bring that up to,
I think that issue is coming up again on the agenda today. You can speak to it then. Any other comments? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote to adopt the minutes as circulated. Councilor Redden moves, seconded by Councilor Hudson. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion's carried. Now, before we go on to business arising from the minutes, I thought this might be an opportune time to talk about our next meeting. I think you're all probably aware that there's been a change in the protocol with respect to the COVID situation. And my understanding is that it comes in this Friday. We're able to meet as we are today, but in discussions with staff this morning, it appears that if the status quo remains in January when our meeting is scheduled, that we would not be able to meet here in the council chambers. I thought we perhaps had an option of going to the ABCC again, but I'm told that the mechanics of moving the equipment there have become more difficult because we're on Facebook as well as Mimeo, and it's just going to be too difficult. So it looks like the situation is that our meeting in January, unless things change, will be a Zoom meeting.
what was the number? Didn't I hear somebody mention 20 or something? Is that correct?
I don't really know if we need to discuss what it says or doesn't say at the moment.
Well, maybe that's the case, we didn't have to change anything.
Sorry?
From what I've heard, but maybe I'm not updated enough.
Well, go ahead.
The protocol issued yesterday by the province reinstates the 6-foot distancing. You don't all fit in here.
I didn't pick up on that.
Yeah.
I didn't. Thank you.
Yeah.
So the next meeting, unless things change, it'll be on Zoom, and if things do change, of course, we'll send a notice out. My hope is we can meet back here again. I'm hoping that this was brought in because of the issues in St. Abax and Inverness mostly, and perhaps I'm hoping that it's to cover the Christmas period when people are together. Hopefully when the Christmas period is over, there'll be another change. So we'll have to play that by ear. Next, business arising from the minutes. These next three items are simply to be put forward to the January Committee of the Whole.
And it can be all done in one motion.
And it can be done in one motion, you say?
Yeah. I know I presented them separately, but they can all be included in one.
Deputy Warden, are you able to put three motions into one all by yourself?
To put these into one motion, all by myself, of course, but I'd rather put them in three because that's how it's written. Would you like me to go ahead with these?
Yes, please.
5.1, recommendation report, regional emergency management bylaw. Come back to January Committee of the Whole.
So we're going to do them separately? Would you why don't you read all three? I think the clerk would like to deal all three at once.
Not a problem. 5.2, regional emergency management intermunicipal agreement. That a recommendation report for the regional emergency management intermunicipal agreement come back to January Committee of the Whole. 5.3, regional emergency management bylaw letter to the minister. That a recommendation report for the regional emergency management bylaw letter to the minister come back to January Committee of the Whole.
Someone second all of those motions? And Councilor LeBlanc seconds. Is there any discussion? Yes, Councilor Morrison?
Thank you. At the Committee of the Whole, I am going to raise the subject of information that we receive concerning a number of subjects from the REMO office in Halifax, which we are not permitted to do anything with. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Morrison. So are you intending to bring that up when these come back in January?
Yes.
Is that the idea? All right, thank you. Any discussion with respect to those motions? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All three motions are carried. Next is item 6.1 under new business.
Yes, sir. 6.1, intermunicipal services agreement, shared service pilot project. That municipal council authorized the warden, the chief administration officer, to execute the document as circulated.
Now, the document that was circulated essentially mirrors the document that was before us at the last meeting where we approved participating in the pilot project. Is there anybody has any questions or comments? Oh, I guess we need a seconder for the motion. Is there a seconder there, Councilor Cotw? Sorry, discussion? Councilor Redden?
So, just one small comment and a clarification. It says that Kings has essentially a veto on the budgets of Valley Waste and Kings Transit.
Well,
It says they just
they're
have
very careful not to use the word veto.
Yeah,
Go
but
ahead.
they have to be in the majority.
Yeah.
So there's a third budget that isn't really explicitly talked about here, and that is the budget of the interim board. And really, it doesn't have much in that budget. It's the salary for the executive and that sort of thing. And so Kings doesn't have that. It doesn't say anywhere that Kings has to be in the majority on that.
Correct. On the pilot project, it's every one of the 7 municipalities has one vote.
And they're all equal. Okay, so I wanted to confirm that because if we look at section 35, dispute resolution page,
Give us the page.
it is 27 of 162. And if we come down to the third line, and immediately after 36 dot, it says, in the event of a budget dispute, it shall be incumbent upon Kings to present an alternative budget. Which is part of their deal with the two other things. I mean,
Yeah, I see. Yeah.
frankly, the way I see that, it works out to our good, but we may want to point out to Kings, or you at these board meetings may want to have a discussion about that in the, making sure we're all putting our best foot forward.
Yeah, good catch. I think what this talks about is the budgeting for Kings Transit and Valley Waste, which we're not involved in.
No, absolutely. I understood
And
why it
but
was
the way it's
there.
worded, it could apply to the budget for the pilot project. I get it, and I will draw that to their attention. We're having a meeting tomorrow in Berwick, and I will draw that to their attention.
And I mostly just wanted to confirm
Yeah.
that I was understanding it that way, and that it wasn't that somebody had missed to put in that Kings had to be in the majority on the overarching
Right.
budget thing.
Yeah, good point.
Other than that,
I'll bring that to their
Quite happy
attention,
with
but that's the intention. Yeah. Anybody else?
As Councillor Bardo pointed out, the budget for us is a little bit more than we've had anticipated, so it is up to 134. I just want to point that out, he had brought it up, so. I just
Right,
wanted to-
right. Last week it was an estimate of 60 to 65, which would be 120 to 130. It's 135, you said?
134, 476.
134, yeah. Anything else? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote then. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? One nay?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Next, recommendation report, Lawrencetown Youth Arena request letter of support acknowledgement.
6.2, recommendation report, Lawrencetown Arena request letter of support acknowledgement that the municipal council provide a letter of awareness acknowledgement to the Lawrencetown Youth Arena to include with their rink revitalization project funding application.
Is there a seconder for that? Councilor Redden seconds. Discussion? Discussion? No? I'll call for the vote then. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion's carried. Next, 6.3.
Recommendation report, community grants program, current application. That the municipal council approve the allocation of grants as presented in Appendix A from the 2021-22 community grant program in accordance with AM-1.4.9 community grant policy for the total of $18,971.60 as follows. $2,000 to the Clarence Community Club, $887.62 West Dalhousie Community Hall Association, and $1,083.09 Frickin Community Hall Society.
Is there a seconder for that? Councilor Morrison seconds. Discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion's carried. Next.
6.4, recommendation report, Mac County Reserve Withdrawal. Municipal council.
Sorry. Sorry. Deputy Warden, Councilor Hudson needs to leave the room. Sorry to interrupt. Okay, please proceed. Thank you.
That municipal council approve a withdrawal from the Max Young Reserve Fund to pay recent maintenance work at the Bridgetown Memorial Arena in the amount of $3,342.12.
Councilor LeBlanc seconds that. Discussion? Councilor Redden?
Just a curiosity, where does this fund get replenished from? I know we've gone through about half of it this year, I think, if the numbers are correct in our package.
I can't answer that. I think the only one that might answer it is not in the room.
Yeah, I'll maybe bring it up with him at lunch then. But
Yeah.
yeah, thank you.
Okay. Yes, so Councilor Bartel?
I'm not familiar with the criteria involved with all of these funds where money was left to the county for use, but has it been researched if there was stipulated a maximum amount per year out of that so that it would be sustainable in growth with interest? Otherwise, if we keep using these, eventually they're going to be gone. So I'm not sure if we have checked or if there's that stipulation in there that has been addressed. It just raised the question. It might have already been done, but just due diligence.
If I may, Mr. Warren?
Sure.
It's only the interest on that account that's spent. So we determine what the annual interest is, and that's what we allocate for various spending programs.
So the money stipulated in the account that remains, that's interest amount?
Yeah, so there's an interest amount that we're spending, and then there's a capital, and we've just invested the capital, and we're surviving on the investment income, yes.
Okay, the residual that's left is,
Yeah.
there's no mention of the capital.
Right, and so if we don't use all of the interest in 1 year, we'll carry that forward to a subsequent
Okay,
period.
okay, I was thinking that that was the whole fund. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anything else? Any other comments? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion's carried.
Councillor Hudson.
Point five.
We'll wait for Councillor Hudson, Deputy Warden.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, okay.
Recommendation report, municipal administration building, Annapolis Royal, basement renovation to accommodate Lawrencetown staff. That municipal council approved an expenditure of $297,000 to renovate the municipal administration building, Annapolis Royal basement area, currently used for storage, into a usable office space for the relocation of the Lawrencetown office staff to the Annapolis building.
Is there a second for that? Councilor Morrison seconds. Now, I had a discussion yesterday with Mr. Dick, and he did want a fulsome discussion about this today. So I'm happy to have that. And I think Councilor Cotw, I saw your hand up.
Yeah, because this is the first time I've seen a number on renovating that space downstairs. And I guess the first time since I've been on council back on council we've discussed on what direction we're going and stuff like that. So if the building is renovated downstairs, does that mean we're closing the Lawrencetown office?
That's my understanding.
So there is a savings there. I know we have to do repairs to the buildings. 20 years ago, we were told and shown that if we would have built a brand new building 20 years ago, the money we spent on these 2 buildings alone would have been paying for that building. And we opted not to build a new building at that point. So we've been spending repair bills ever since. And then when we got Bridgetown as a community of a county, we accepted another building that we spent money on. So I just don't like the idea of just keep dumping money into an old car. I mean, it comes to the point where when you see other municipalities have brand new buildings and they're efficient and they're all under one roof and other things added to it, I think long term, I think our council should be having a little bit of insight in where we're going to go in the future of a facility that's up to date and a bigger council chambers and, to accept the community members when they want to come to these meetings and hopefully appropriate where in the county is where a building would go of that sorts. But if we're, like I said, if we're putting $300,000 into renovating this building and we're going to close down Lawrencetown, it's taking the opportunity away from the citizens on that end more. It's dragging everything down to the west end. And I understand the concept behind getting everyone under one roof, but I'm hoping in the future that we can clearly look at something to be more generous to all the people in our county, not just push everything down one end of the county and It makes a lot of work for business people going for development permits or permits. Now they gotta run all the way to Annapolis instead of going to Lawrencetown. So there's a lot to think about, and I guess that's the problem I have with spending money on old buildings, is that both buildings are at their life end. And when we see $300,000 dumped more into it, I can accept that, because if it's the plan of closing Lawrencetown, then hopefully we can gain get our $300,000 worth back by only operating one building. Because I'm sure the $300,000 to operate the Lawrencetown building wouldn't last very many years, and it would be paid for. So, and hopefully there's avenues to sell that building to make some revenue back that'll replenish that $300,000. But it just, I hope we have the vision of going forward at a later date. So.
Mr. Dick, if I could follow up on Councillor Connell's comments, has there ever been a kind of evaluation done of the cost of a new building?
No, but if I may, and I do appreciate Councillor Connell's comments, and this is really why we brought the report to council in the form that it's being brought to council today. I think I've spoken to every one of you individually about the existing facilities we have and long-term viability of a new building. So one of the things I took upon myself was to get an assessment of what the value of this building would be if we were to repair it and renovate it. And so we engaged the services of an architect a number of weeks ago, and they came in and we'd given them some design plans, and what Councillor Connell said is, an expanded council chambers, because I don't really think this is efficient from doing the job of council. So that was one of the plans, is we were going to expand on the building. And the rates that he had predicted, depending on the two options that we had presented, and I will say that given Councillor Bartow's background, I asked him if he would just sit on these meetings from a 10,000-foot view. Given the expectations that we had in two different options, the value to repair this building and to expand it was, depending on what option you looked at, was $1.5 to $2.5 million. That's ridiculous to put that kind of money into an old building. And as we've talked over time, it seems to me that most of council is interested in having a new building. New building is probably going to be in the neighborhood of $5 to $6 million, and I'm looking at the one in Kings County, which seems to be sort of the model that we're looking at. That's in the $5 to $6 million range. That's not something that we are in a position at this point in time to even, in my opinion, even look at, given some of the other financial challenges that we have going forward for the next 2 or 3 years. So to me, this was just a stopgap effort to try to get some efficiencies in how we run our operations in the county, recognizing that there's a separation here from one end of the county to the next, and I do appreciate that. And we try to accommodate that in our plans going forward. But I was looking at, can we do something that's relatively inexpensive, and I don't mean to be crass when I say $300,000 isn't a lot of money, but the plan was just to get us here for a period of time and then have a more fulsome discussion with council and the community about the fact that, do we need a new building? And do we need to spend $5 or $6 million on it? And then the bigger issue is, if council agrees to that, is where that would be. And there will be some discussions about that. And I'm just not sure, in my own opinion, if now is the time to do that. Do I see a benefit of having everybody in the same building? Clearly I do. I think there's some economies of scale. There's certainly some efficiencies in the labor workforce that probably, if it is $300,000, we probably, as Councillor Connell said, we probably recoup that in a relatively short period of time. But that's only a stopgap measure. So what I really want council to do, that's why we presented it this way, is this a decision that council wants to do about building a new building? We haven't had that yet, and I don't think that today's the time. But if that's what we're thinking about, do we want to just forego everything in the short term and then plan on a new building in 4 or 5 years? Because quite frankly, to get the finances in place to do it, it's going to take that amount of time. And the bigger decision, as I said earlier, is where. I think that would probably take longer than it would to build. So those are the options. Do we want to invest $300,000 in this building and have it done in a relatively short time frame? Or do we want to just sort of live with the status quo and then set up some kind of a formal committee to talk about a new place to live? So as the warden said, we did have this discussion yesterday about the recommendation, and really the purpose of staff putting the recommendation the way it is really, I think it's about time we started engaging not only council but the community in a new building. And Councillor Connell's right. This is I don't know how old this building is, 30 or 40 years. It has lived its life. We are doing some renovations on the roof that are, it's going to cost $90,000. That's a lot of money to invest. And it's a lot of money to invest that if we're not going to use this building. So this is really put forward to not, as I said, not have the discussion today, but I think this is a discussion that we need to have in the near future.
Thank you. Councillor Morrison?
Thank you. From time to time over the last 9 years, various councillors have raised the subject of a new building. And if I may say, there was absolutely no reaction from the administrative part of the operations of the county, which to me and to others indicated a negative approach to the subject. I was very happy with the ease with which we acted on the matter of the Bridgetown building recently. I believe that we should have one building. And Councillor Connell has raised that, and the CAO has raised the subject of one building. And I believe that we should have at least a preliminary discussion on the matter of a new building with regard to cost and with regard to best estimates as to when we might be able to start this new building, if we agree there should be one, from a financial point of view. With regard to this specific recommendation, if it can be shown that over the next few years, because in my mind, and I'm an artsman, I know nothing much about architecture and building, but I would say from today it would be 5 years before we have a new building. And if we can save money and improve efficiencies in the workings of our county administration, I would be in favor of this motion. Thank you.
Would you like to respond?
No.
Yeah, but I'm just, Councillor Morrison raised the issue of whether over a 5-year period we would be actually saving money by moving everybody here or not. Are you able to respond to that?
I think I can probably answer that as accountants like to do in a non-committal answer, but I certainly think that there's some financial savings, clearly. I haven't quite identified them all, but by closing 2 other buildings, we recognize that there are savings. I'm looking at the bigger gain being the efficiencies. That's what I see. Instead of having, 3 administrative people, we may not need 3. We may be able to get by with 2, and then have some other resources in places that we're not addressing at this point. So overall, I think if you were to quantify that, say yes, we could identify 297. Yes.
Thank you. Deputy Warden?
Thank you very much. Just a couple of comments. Bear River citizens and Maitland Bridge citizens, if they want a building permit, right now they have to go to Lawrencetown. So, I just want to refer you to Councillor Connell's comment about, they have somebody from Lawrencetown or Middleton, that area would have to come way down to Annapolis Royal. Well, right now it's in the opposite. And as far as, I don't think that putting money into an old building is a good thing. But in this case, I'm all right with it because it puts staff all under one roof. And I think that's a good thing for the operation of the county, of the municipality. So I'm all for this, and I'm sure that there will be savings because staff will no longer be
Councillor Hudson?
Yes, just a question, or perhaps two. If we approve this and the staff are relocated here to Annapolis, will the building be sold? And I guess my second question, I'll just continue, would be...
Why don't we take
Okay.
one at a time, and through
Okay.
me, I'll ask the CAO if he can respond to that.
So the expectation would be if council approves this, we would expect that we would probably look at divesting ourselves of that property. And not being a landlord, I don't think that's really what the intention would be, but it could be. And just so council's aware, we have had some very discreet discussions with the province. Would they be interested in having the whole building? That was a discussion that we had. But before you go to your second question, if I may try to respond to what the Deputy Warden just said and what Councillor Connell said is, there's nothing to say that we can't have a part-time office in different parts of the county. And I know that there's a cost associated with that. But if that was something that council recognized as a problem of people driving from one end to the other or one end to the other, we could have a half-day operation someplace. And just so council's aware, we are talking with our neighbors, Middleton and Annapolis Royal, about providing some planning and building services to them. And one of the options would be is to have our staff there for half a day a week, for example, or whatever we decide on. So certainly those options are available. If that becomes a stumbling block, I do recognize that, there's a fair bit of traveling for people to go back and forth, and if they were to come here, certainly we would see if there's an option available for us that we could limit. You're not going to limit it all, but you could certainly limit it and say, okay, we're there every Tuesday afternoon from 1 to 5. And hopefully people could come in that time frame, and if not, then we make other arrangements. So anyway, just sorry I sort of sidetracked, but...
Your second question, Councillor Hudson?
Yes, the second question had to do with that this is not a budgeted item, and I was just curious as to what funds would be used to cover this expenditure.
CAO?
I guess their funds haven't been identified yet, and I didn't want to get into that detail about funding until we had this conversation. So the expectations are, if council is in favor of doing this, we would come back with something a little bit more detailed than what we have now. And that would probably be in January or February. And the reality is, if council were to say yes, we have to go and tender the project. And by the time you issue the tender and you get responses back from the tender, we're really probably a couple, 3 months down the road anyway, and we're almost into the next year anyway. So if that were the circumstance, we would probably have some funds identified for the next budget, or there might be some savings that we've identified in the current budget that we'd ask to carry forward.
Councillor LeBlanc?
All of the issues that have been raised here were all the issues that I was thinking of. And especially I understand that we're not centralized as far as our county for our people to be in the middle, for everybody to be, there's always a distance no matter what you're doing. But with the options that the CAO said that he could do, that maybe he could have days here or 2 or 3 days or however you're going to put it, it sounds a lot better, because I know it's a problem for Guns district to travel to Lawrencetown, but it would be no different for the other way around. However, the county's building is closer to the west compared to the east, and so with the 2 buildings, the way they were placed, it was more central for each end of the county. Is how I'm going to place it, I guess. The concern of the money and the concern of having a building in Lawrencetown maybe partly being used half the time, it raises some issues. And of course, I know that the $300,000, we don't know where we're going to get it. Well, I'm saying 300, it's a little under, but anything can move. Right. The target moves. So, I do have some concerns before we start doing anything concrete. I think maybe it should be a motion to yes, we're invested into doing something to bring in our staff together. However, we have to look at all the other options that we were placed on the floor right now. That's where I am with this motion. I don't disagree. However, I think it shouldn't be in stone yet with a stamp on it saying this is what we're doing before we have all the other options.
If I could pick up on that, Mr. Dick, I noticed that if this is approved, the idea would be you put out some tenders. So when the tenders come back, regardless of whether they're above or below the 300,000, would that come back to council for approval?
Not knowing what our normal process is, I would certainly bring it back to council. That's why this is really fluid at this point, and certainly when we issue a tender, we always advise that it's not necessarily going to be awarded, but if we came back and it was, the work we wanted done was 600,000, obviously we'd come back to council and say that's probably out of the range that we would look at. So yes, we would bring it back to council.
So really, that's when the rubber's going to hit the road, rather than today.
Right, exactly.
Councillor Sheridan?
Let's look at the motion.
So if I understand correctly, it won't affect this year's budget, if I'm reading you right, in regards to by the time the tenders get out and it gets awarded, it'll be in next year's budget?
Because we're in the municipal world, that's a yes.
Okay.
If we were in any other world, it would probably be no. We would probably do it sooner than later, but just because things take longer here, yes.
Okay, and my next question is, it's a capital project, so I'm just wondering, does gas tax fall under this category?
In terms of whether that, I don't know the answer. My gut is saying no, because it's really an administrative function. So my gut is saying no. I don't know. I know they change the rules regularly, but I would say if you were to ask me now, I don't want to give an answer, but I'd probably say no.
Okay, thank you.
So, Councillor Cotw?
Thank you. This is a good thing to have this conversation, especially before we make a decision. I'd just like to point out, and I'm biased in this area, that the East End is the area of largest growth for the last number of years as far as housing and subdivisions and so on. And I know when the CAO came to District 1 and we went around, I mean, you go 200 or 300 feet in some cases and you're off into another subdivision, you're here and there. So I would hate to see the Lawrencetown office closed completely. To me, I think that is very problematic. Councillor Connell and Councillor LeBlanc have spoken along similar lines, and if we can achieve some economies of scale here and yet keep a satellite office of sorts, I think, in Lawrencetown, it would be a lot more palatable to me. I recognize we are up against it. I know the deputy warden has spoken before about, we should build a new building, and I can't disagree necessarily there, but it's all a question of funding, and I take solace from the CAO's comments that perhaps we could have something there a couple of days a week or whatever. I've added a day in case you didn't notice. But I just think it's important to realize that from Middleton to the Kings County line and the North and South Mountains, it's a really strong growth area, and I would hate to see services depleted completely. Anyway, thank you. It's a good discussion ahead.
Councillor Redden?
So I actually received an email about this morning asking why we hadn't done any public consultation about amalgamating our offices, and I must say my initial thought, being the sometimes painfully literal person I am, was that, well, it's the CAO's prerogative how he organizes the municipality stuff. And then I was thinking about it more, and I think from our Bridgetown meeting and the email, they both sort of indicate that these buildings are very much thought of as parts of their communities. And I'm not saying we shouldn't amalgamate buildings because they are part of people's communities, but we should maybe be a little more conscious to acknowledge that these changes are affecting people's communities. These buildings are next door neighbors to people. They're the place down the road. They're integrated. The county is a very small place, as well as being geographically very large. And that I just wanted to kind of put that out there as a social perspective more so than a financial or geographic perspective. Kind of lost my train of thought there. Anyways, I'll leave that subject and go on to for $300,000. I'm afraid I sit with the CAO. I thought that was quite economical for a renovation of that much square footage. I didn't get a chance to walk through there this morning like I had hoped, but it's renovations aren't cheap, especially in commercial space. So I'm in favor in general. I'm happy with payback times I think are okay, and if efficiency is the name of the game, I'm happy with that too. I think efficiency is something we need more of. As to a new building down the road, something that's come up in a number of conversations and I'll bring up later in this meeting is we don't have a master plan, we don't have a strategic plan, we don't have an economic plan, we don't have a recreation plan. There's no long-term planning in this county. The idea of even discussing a new building without at least a 20-year plan is maybe misplaced. That's all.
I would like to just pick up on your comment about the consultation, and perhaps I dropped the ball. I didn't know that this was coming on the agenda until it was circulated, but I do intend to call the chair of the commission this week, the Lawrencetown Commission, Village Commission, and have a discussion with them just to make sure everybody knows what the other people are doing. That's all. In case, get some idea of what the community thinks about it. Do you want to respond to that?
Well, for that matter, I dropped the ball. I had a meeting with the Village Commission last night, as I do every month, and I forgot to mention this as well. So.
Okay.
Did you have your outfit on?
But pardon?
Did you have your outfit on?
Yeah, I agree a lot with what's going on around the room, like kind of waiting to put it up. I think that there's definite issues that has to be resolved before we move forward. Consolidation of our administration and the efficiencies that creates, I think, is probably heading down the right road. Being sympathetic to distances is a concern, but we're looking at a stopgap measure to, it sounds like, before we move to a new facility. If that's the case, then I think that there's short-term pain for long-term gain by doing what we're doing, we're presenting now. As far as satellite offices, I can understand that, but it does create more cost to do that. In reality, how often what percentage of the county, if never, do they visit the county office, or do they, are we looking at, oh yeah, we're doing this and talking with satellite office because everybody goes to the grocery store every week, which this is a whole different ball of wax. And if it is for, like I said, transitional stage, and people understand our long-term goals, I don't foresee that it would be a big issue. There's always going to be controversies no matter what you do, but I think that if we can prove that not only the cost of infrastructure that's involved, but the efficiencies of having staff under one roof, and what that streamlines the operation. I think, there's things like Council Red said about our strategic plans and stuff, but for the long-term efficiencies, I think that we need to be heading down this road. As far as how we get there, there's preliminary discussions, but there's going to be a lot more feedback required. There's going to be a lot more reports required to come back to council. If this is 300-some-thousand estimate, I think that before we voted on that amount, I would say that we should qualify that and say that budgetary speak would be around that, but not dedicating that amount yet until and I think there's lots of time before that would have to be done, and we'd be in budget time anyway, and it would result in next year's budget. So I think that there's a lot to be considered. We're not going to solve all the problems in the universe today, but we've had some good discussions. I think that there's a lot of good points that have been brought up. I guess that's my thoughts at this point.
Councilor Longmire?
Thank you. And I've agreed. I've enjoyed the conversation around the room. I guess I would like to just make a remark on the efficiencies. And I know that we talk about putting a physical building in a space, and I truly believe that these buildings do represent far more to a connection in our communities than sometimes we seem to feel. How often we visit, none of us can really know how often we need to frequent these buildings. I would like to see us in the future, and this, is really kind of off topic, but kind of on topic, our efficiencies around our electronic presence. We can, achieve a lot of flexibility for persons wanting and needing to apply for applications and permits and whatnot. So in the future, some of that is going to have to be as well factored in. And, satellites are great, but there's definitely other options, and I look forward to the continued conversation around this topic. Thanks.
Councilor Cotw?
Yes, and I guess when it all boils down to the point of, I know it's not only running the Lordstown office, it's going to be repairs to that building every year too. When we look at our capital and we see what's spent on those buildings every year, if we're going to do a closure of that building and move our staff to Annapolis, hopefully the CAO will look into putting a temporary office in the town of Middleton or something like that, so the residents, because there is a lot of activity in the East End, and it's not only to go for permits, it's the many trips to the county office discussing what you can do when you apply for that permit. What can you do with this subdivision? DOT alone goes to the county office many times when they're doing permits on driveways and stuff like that, just for questions and answers. So I definitely am 100% behind going all to one building, and I can understand it coming here because there is room downstairs that's never been used. So we pay full repair of this building and only use 50% of it. And anyone that runs their household, you downsize. But we've got a whole basement that we're not making anything of, a couple of offices. So I definitely am supporting it, but I hope when the decision comes down is that it's already put in place for a temporary office to be in the East End for at least a period of time during the week, so the citizens in that East End have the opportunity to go to somewhere to get their information and their permits. So.
Good.
I don't see any other, excuse me, I don't see any other hands up. I'll say what I feel about this. I'm in favor of this motion. I also think that we should start thinking about a new building. This building is 55 years old. It was built in 1967. In 5 years' time, it'll be 60 years old. I agree with Councillor Morrison that this is a 5-year project if we're going to build a new building. This building is inadequate for our purposes in the council chambers. When we bring in the other people from Lawrencetown, if this passes, it'll be very crowded. We need a new facility, but we need to do it financially appropriately, and we need to plan and ensure that we have appropriate funds to do it without taxing, to use the word, our taxpayers too much to do it. With respect to this particular motion, I'll vote in favor, but I'm voting in favor on the basis that it'll come back before council after the tenders come back. I'd rather the motion had read something to the effect of council approve the setting of tenders for the project, rather than authorizing an expenditure at this point in time. But I'm prepared on the understanding that it'll come back to council when the tenders come out. At least the motion drafted this way gives us a firm idea of what the cost is going to be. But as I said, I'd rather that this just be a motion to approve the issuance of tenders. I agree with the idea of moving everybody under one roof. I do think it would be much more efficient. I know there are concerns that have been expressed around the table. But on that basis, I'll be supporting the motion.
So can you amend that motion?
Do you want to make an amendment?
Well, I think that's what you're talking about.
Can we just table it?
The CAO is suggesting that we just table this motion until we want to bring it back.
Yeah, maybe given what council's saying, maybe bring it back when we have tenders and those documents, bring it back in February, let's say.
But you'll still issue the tenders?
Yeah, we'll still, I think that's the permission I'm getting from council and the respective elf. Yes, we could do that.
So Councillor LeBlanc, would that meet your approval rather than amending the
Well, I
motion
think it
to
would
table
be
it?
your approval as well as mine and maybe a few others on council, yes.
So would you like to make a motion to table this?
I would certainly like to do that, Ms. Young.
And is there a seconder for that? Councillor Bartow seconds that. So I'll call for the motion. It's been a good discussion. I'll call for the motion to table this issue. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion's carried.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I have a question before
Sure,
we
go
go
ahead.
on, because we're talking about gas tax, and it just dawned on me about how much we could take from. If we have an initiative for some kind of energy efficiency, could we not take gas tax money to put into the building?
If it was, certainly in a new building, my reaction would be yes. In an existing building, I guess you'd have to sit back and say, is there a cost benefit to putting energy efficiency into a building that you may only be in for 3 or 4 or 5 years? So I guess we'd have to have that discussion, but I would think the answer generally is yes to that question.
Thank you.
That efficiency.
Councillor Hudson, we're kind of between matters here, but go ahead.
No, I'm in favor of this as perhaps amended, as we table it for the next meeting.
Yeah.
When we do bring this back up for a discussion again, I would like to receive a report that would sort of outline the savings that will happen. You know, should we proceed with this and move the staff from Lawrencetown to...
The issue's been tabled. It'll come back before council, and I'm sure that the CEO will keep in mind your comments. So let's move along to the next item, which is 6.6.
Could I just ask one question?
Sure, go ahead. Just hold on a second, Deputy Warden, if you would.
Just
a question?
Related to the gas tax, and I just wanted to ask a question. And both efficiencies and whether it's a temporary use of this building, but wouldn't that apply, like if the building was going to be passed on to somebody else, that down the road, what other users would gain the benefit of that? So that would make it qualified, wouldn't it?
It could, yes. I'm thinking more the decision would be ours, whether we'd want to invest gas tax money in a building that would make, yes.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Go ahead, Deputy Warden, thank you.
Thank you. 6.6, recommendation report, water reader upgrade. That municipal council approved an expenditure of $34,000 to replace the existing meter
there a seconder for that? Councillor Connell seconds. Discussion? Councillor LeBlanc?
Is this only for the Bridgetown area, or is it for all of the county and all the places?
It's for the entire county.
Okay.
But I do, if I can, make a comment on this. If council's concerned about the timeliness of this, it did cause me some concern as well. And this is one of those areas where things fell through the crack. I was concerned when I saw this last week. Why are they telling us now that the software isn't going to support the hardware at the end of the year? What kind of game are they playing? And we didn't get an opportunity to go out and potentially tender other opportunities. The unfortunate reality is that we were informed of this last March, and somehow it fell through the cracks. And we didn't get advised again until a few weeks ago, and the unfortunate thing is that now we have no choice. We have to go with this software because we've got the hardware. So it's in theory, it's an unbudgeted expenditure, although we do have reserves to cover it, so it's not coming from the tax base. But so what I've done is I've asked the IT department to be involved in any IT decisions here, so we can't have these things fall through the cracks any longer. So at least going forward, issues like this, it would be known by the respective department and the IT department, so one would hope that it doesn't get missed. So it's just something that happened here last March, and I'm not happy about it because I thought we were getting pushed into a corner, but the reality is we dropped the ball.
All right.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion's carried. 6.7.
6.7, recommendation report, future operations of Raven Haven Beachside Family Park. That municipal council authorized the CAO to prepare a long-term plan for the future operation of Raven Haven as a day-use park, commencing 2022-23.
Is there a seconder for that? Councilor Longmire seconds. Ms. Campbell, you wanted to say something?
I apologize that we've had a great deal of consideration of the future operation of Ravenhaven, and the recommendation actually changed during the development of the agenda for today's meeting. So we're actually now recommending a workshop in January because of the complexity of the issues involved in planning for the future of Ravenhaven. So I would ask if consideration might be given to changing that motion to be a workshop to be scheduled in January to consider long-term plans for future operation of Ravenhaven, rather than giving a direction as to a particular course of action to follow today.
I do see that the 6.15 does have Ravenhaven on it.
So the motion can just be withdrawn and it'll be picked up in 6.15.
If council's agreeable to that. I think rather than, I don't know if it's necessarily for the deputy warden as the mover of the motion to withdraw. I think I'd like to have the sense of council that we'll deal with this at a committee of the whole meeting. Would someone perhaps like to make a motion to supersede the one on the floor somehow and move this to a committee of the whole to be set later today? Something along those lines.
It's much simpler if the motion is withdrawn.
Exactly.
And the special committee of the whole is discussed.
I know he withdraws the motion, okay. And then the seconder, who is the seconder? Councillor Longmire. My own sense was that usually the person who brings the motion is the person who's pushing the motion forward. And the deputy warden isn't necessarily pushing this motion forward, it's coming from staff. That was my concern. However, it's been dealt with and everybody I can see around the room is happy with where we are. So we'll leave it at that. Councillor Morrison.
Notwithstanding what we've just done, could I ask, with regard to page 87 of 162, and this will be necessary for the workshop, but option 3, divest ownership, the first bullet, I don't believe is in accordance with existing agreements. So that'll be something we'll talk about when we go to the workshop.
All right, thank you very much for that. So we're down to, we've withdrawn 6.7. 6.8.
Recommendation report, AF 2.2.1, intern staff appointment, policy repeated. That municipal council, appeal, AF 2.2.1, intern staff appointment, policy, 7-day notice.
Is there a seconder for that?
I'll second.
Councillor Sheridan seconds. Discussion? Councillor Morrison.
Thank you. We need the CAO for this discussion.
Okay. Perhaps the next one, it might take some time. What time is it? Do you want to have a morning break then? 5 minutes?
Sure.
Okay, so we'll no, Councillor Morrison would like the CAO to respond to a question, so rather than moving to another item, because they might take some time, I think we'll just take a 5-minute break. We'll come back. Okay, welcome back. Everyone, we were in the middle of item number 6.8 regarding interim staff appointments policy repeal, and Councillor Morrison had a question to the CAO.
Thank you. I think I understand this. I just want to be sure that if a staff member is required for a designated period of time to assume the duties of another staff member who is in a supervisory situation, that the staff member assuming the acting position will be additionally remunerated.
Correct.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Councillor Redden?
So this was initially passed in 2017 unanimously, and I was wondering if there was a particular reason for it back then, because it seems to have been quite popular at the time. Do we have any background on that from the staff, maybe? Green Warden?
I couldn't answer the question. I don't know. Don isn't here. Normally what he heard. Carolyn, would you know? You don't recall though.
So, I mean, really I'm coming to kind of the same spot Councillor Morrison is that this is labor protection for non-union employees. And I like that being formalized. I understand the issues raised with it when I read through the policy, and I'm content to go along with it, but I was also I would kind of like to see something maybe come back in the future that plays a similar role to, by policy, protect our employees. Not necessarily on a short-term basis, but that's all I have to say.
If I may, Mr. Warren, I think that's certainly something that we're identifying. We also want to recognize that there's internal staff that have exhibited some tendencies to provide additional skills. We want to recognize those as well. So that's sort of why we're having this thought process about. I think the policy that we have now says that we have to go out for everything, and I think that the approach that staff would rather take is if there's somebody internal that we could recognize, and if we could advance them to that position for an interim period of time, we want to see what that skill set is.
Right. Anybody else? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion's carried. 6.9. 6.9,
recommendation report. Request to remove East River Mines estate. That municipal council give authorization to approach all affected property owners along the east to offer for the county to remove east.
Is there a seconder for that? Sharon seconds. I'm going to take the opportunity, if I might, to speak first on this one, because I did go out and look at the property on the weekend. Mr. Reese has spoken to me a number of times over the past number of months about this issue. He values his privacy with respect to this, and I get that because I'm a similar kind of person. I like my privacy. So my wife and I went out and looked at the property that the county owns and the easement that goes along behind the properties. I will tell you that the land that the county owns and the easement are spectacular properties along a beautiful river. There's old growth hemlocks by the river. It's a very special place, I thought, walking through it. The river, I used the messaging, the distance function on viewpoint, and it's about 550 feet from Mr. Reese's house to the river. And it's mostly all treed. It's pretty well all forest, mostly softwood, some hardwood. There are about 3 other houses between where you enter onto the county's property and then go along the easement and Mr. Reese's. When you're back on the county property in the easement, you can't see those. You just can't even see those houses. You can get a glimpse of Mr. Reese's house when you're on the easement back to his property. So I think it's important to understand that there's 550 feet or so, approximate, between the easement and his house, and it's all treed. So I firmly believe that although the county has a lot of property, that we keep the property and easements for future generations. These are not immediate issues to be dealt with at this time. They're to be looked at long term. Mr. Reese might sell his house in a little while. I feel sorry for him because he tells us that his lawyer missed the fact that there was an easement on his property when he purchased it, and I do regret that. And so this is, a difficult situation. As I said, I like him, I like my privacy, but in this particular case, my own view is that the public good overweighs the private need, and I'll be voting against the motion. If there's any further discussion. Councillor LeBlanc.
I have the same views, and also there's a cost. But in the motion, it recommends to remove, to remove each easement. So that would be
I think there's about 4. I think it goes over 4 properties maybe.
So, and each one would be a cost.
Well, the cost to register the removal of the easement and registry of deeds. Yeah.
Which is the cost to the county.
Yeah.
Okay, but then I have another issue, and the issue is of insurance. And then the cost of if we're covered or if the county isn't covered, and how it affects the homeowners and its particular piece. The other issue is if you look on page 100, down the bottom where Mark Dunning gave a report, not the last paragraph, but the one where it starts, the Community Easement Act does not apply because this easement was not created under the Act. Could somebody explain how that particular easement was not created under the Act?
Mr. Cotw, yes, go ahead.
The Community Easement Act, I believe, was created in 2013. So when we asked the question to the solicitor, he said because it was the act itself was created afterwards, that's why it wasn't created. This was 1999, I believe.
Yes, 98, 99.
Yes, yeah. So he said the act wouldn't apply because it wasn't even in existence when they created these easements.
So how does that, where does that put us? with all the easements that we have for the other homes.
Well, I don't know, but some easements are 100 years old and they're still easements.
Exactly. But all of a sudden, it wasn't created under this act.
I'm not familiar with the act, so I can't really respond. Yes, go ahead.
The Community Easement Act, I'm not an expert, but it directly relates to recreational type properties. And as the warden said, it just wasn't in existence at that time. And at that time, an easement was an easement, in simple terms.
Councilor Cotw?
It's definitely a bone contention, and I guess one landowner that is affected by it. If it wasn't for that, we wouldn't even be having this discussion. I assume that with these easements, they were put in place councils back, and I assume that there was a lot of discussion before that was done, and it was done for a reason. You wouldn't be too quick to, especially where the other landowners have expressed no problem, and the one that does have a problem, it was his lawyer that created the problem, because if due diligence was done and they were aware of it, full disclosure, that would have been in their decision system by the property. For us to back off on that and knowing that they're not necessarily going to be there forever, like future endeavors and future property owners, we don't know that. But I'm just going back to why it was created originally. It would, for us to quickly and frivolously to backtrack on that, maybe we'd be missing the boat a little bit. I don't think this is a legal issue for the county. It's more of a legal issue for the landowner who lawyer didn't migrate that lease into it. The lease is still there. On his deed, it's not attached, but it's still there. It's our lease. So I guess I wouldn't be too quick to. I guess I'd be voting against doing anything at this point. You know, unless new information came to light, I think that there's be more detriment to future county efforts. You know, and if this park is to remain, to have that attached to it for trail along the river might be quite nice. If we decided that this piece of land that the county owns, which is minor access to, that at that time we would consider releasing those leases along there, because then we wouldn't have the access to it anyway. So I think that it would be short-sighted for us to what's the word?
Remove
the easements. Yeah. So I would prefer them to stay in place at this point.
Anybody else? Councilor Sheridan.
So regarding the insurance, the liable part of it, the way I read it, it would fall back onto the property owner if we were to remove the easement. Am I correct in saying that? It's under possible undesired effects in our package. Is that what it's saying?
If we remove the easement, it would be his land, and somebody going on his land would be a trespasser, I guess. But you can still, as a landowner, you can still be liable to trespassers unless you take certain steps.
So that would be my concern. If we remove we're putting more liability on the homeowner if we remove the easements, because if somebody were to get injured trucking along there somehow, that homeowner could be the one being sued.
That's possible, yeah.
So I guess I'm going to vote against this as well. Okay.
Point of clarification.
Yeah.
Through you want to say, does our, I assume we have a blanket insurance policy for all lands that we have liability insurance on. Now, I assume that extends to easements as well as owned lands? Okay, just want to make sure that.
Ms. Campbell has her hand up. Did you want to say something?
The reason that this property owner brought forward this request to the county is that his legal advice, and this was confirmed by our insurance company, is he is totally liable for anyone being injured. Our liability insurance does not protect him from liability should someone be injured while using that easement. That was the basis for his request. And our insurance company confirmed that us also co-insuring that property does not relieve him of liability.
No, but I think anybody who was injured on the property would sue both the owner of the easement and us. And so I would think the county would probably take the lead role in that. Anybody else? Councillor Cotw?
Well, I feel bad for the gentleman if it wasn't shown on his deed when he purchased the property, but I just went through this a couple years ago for another person, and I dug the easement out, and the courts awarded, and it wasn't on purchaser's deed that the gentleman had an easement, but the courts went back through long prior to the Easement Act, and there was an easement across that property, and guess what I had to do? I had to go fill the ditch back in and build a driveway for the guy again, because an easement, a registered easement, is an easement. No matter if it's under the act or if it's not under the act. So I'm agreeing with everybody else that for future use, we may not use it today, but who knows in 50 years down the road what society will want to use of it, and I agree with it. Along that river, there's all kinds of beautiful areas, and he could sell his house tomorrow, and then the person that takes it may encourage us to put a park down there. You know, it goes it both ways. So I'm not for the motion. I think we should be keeping all of these things.
Anybody else? Councillor Redden?
Yeah, I'm I think pretty much in the same spot as everybody else here. I have a great deal of empathy for the homeowner. We have family properties with easement issues around it. I can understand the frustration. If we come back in 3 or 4 years with a recreation plan for the whole county and it recommends getting rid of this easement, I'd be happy to revisit it with the homeowner. You know, I definitely don't want to get rid of it now, but I could be convinced to get rid of it in the future, I guess is what I'm trying to say. That said, I have friends who back onto something quasi-similar. They don't back onto parkland, but they back onto unusable space in their development. And there's a little path that they've trodden through the woods that takes them onto other paths. And that was a major selling feature for their property. So what may be a negative for one person is a positive for others. And like I said, I have a great deal of empathy for these homeowners, but I think long-term plan, we need to leave it there for the future. Simon may want to walk there in a few 20, 30, 40, 50 years.
Run.
Yeah.
Buy it. Maybe he'll buy it.
Maybe.
Anybody else? Councillor Prout?
Just follow up with Councillor Connell's comments. An easement is an easement. I granted one on a piece of property I owned in Yarmouth to Nova Scotia Power, and forever afterwards, like when I sold the land, it's very clearly stipulated there's an easement that comes in 800 feet on this particular section to take you to a dam on a lake, and while I feel for the property owner, through no fault of his own, the lawyer handling the purchase of the land, it slipped through it went through the cracks. And if it appears to be a very onerous situation for the property owner, but if I think that adds to the value of his property. I'm sure he could, in this market, should he choose, he could get the money back, and though it means moving. The land is, I used to work for a gentleman named George Wade, and he used to have one saying, well, he had many sayings, but one was, invested land, they're not making any more of it, except maybe in the Netherlands, but anyway.
Any other comments? Councillor LeBlanc?
It's like everybody else. We certainly feel for the homeowner because he was hid by something that he didn't even know about. So that makes it difficult for him to navigate around because he didn't know about the easement. But then I have all the residents in that subdivision stating how useful and how they like and have bought homes in there because they could have a walking trail to walk down by the river and sit or do whatever. So it's a complex thing, and it's like councillors have said, people come in, people move out. Everybody has their own ideas of how it is, but a lot of the residents do walk through the trail and just go in and sit. You walk through it. It's a nice little trail. And it was basically it's the people in that subdivision that do use the trail. So to remove all the easements, as the motion says, I'm not sure we should be doing that before we know what we're going to do with the land. I'll leave it at that.
I think everybody's spoken. Anybody else? Oh, Deputy Warden, yes?
Thank you. I'll be voting against this motion, and basically with two words, and that's called buyer beware. When I buy something, I should check it over in the background to it. This gentleman, don't know, he should have checked into this before he bought the property. Thank you.
It was a lawyer.
I'll call for the vote unless there's somebody else. I think everybody has spoken. All those in favor of the motion, I think we'll read the motion again. Maybe the clerk can read it, or I can read it. That municipal council give authorization to approach all affected property owners along the easement to offer for the county to remove each easement. All those in favor say aye. All those against say nay. Nay. I think it's unanimously nay. Thank you very much. Next, 610.
610, recommendation report. AM-1.4.2.1, fire response services policy, amend. That municipal council amend AM-1.4.2.1, fire response services policy to read fire and emergency services policy with amendments to circulate 7-day notice.
Is there a seconder for that? Councilor LeBlanc, seconds. Discussion. Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Councilor Hudson, did you have your hand?
No, I'm sorry.
I didn't hear any nays.
Point 11.
Yes, please.
Point 11, recommendation report. A1, dog bylaw, first reading to amend. Municipal council give first reading to amend A1, dog bylaw by increasing minimum fine.
Is there a seconder for that? Councilor Fred seconds. Discussion? Okay, yes, Deputy Warden.
Thank you so much. And I read through this, and we don't get that many dogs really in the county. Why are we increasing the dog? The cats seem to be our biggest problem. People taking ownership of their cats and that. So I just wonder why this is coming up, the A1 dog bylaw, why all of a sudden we're... Maybe I just need a little more explanation.
I see Ms. Campbell has her hand up, so I'll invite her to perhaps respond, Deputy Warden.
This was a recommendation that I discussed with the manager of protective services. We are in the process of updating our summary offense ticket process, and it came up as part of that discussion because we have a lot of instances of dogs running at large in the county, and a number of them is second, third, or subsequent offenses. And so our theory, our principle for presenting this to you is as a deterrent for second, third, and subsequent occurrences of dogs running at large in the county.
Thank you.
Anybody else? My comment is that I would have increased the maximum fines more than in what's proposed. I would have said that if it's a second time, it should be 400, not less than 400 and not more than 2,000. And in the third one, 600, not less than 600 and not more than 3,000. I would have made it more meaningful. But
even more deterrence. Good for me.
But I was going to say, since this is what staff has brought back, I didn't think I'd necessarily make a motion for an amendment because I really don't have the background, right? I'm sitting here reading this, and I'm assuming staff has more background information, and they came up with these numbers. But I'm just telling you my own view is I would have stiffened it. Councillor LeBlanc?
I understand your point of view, however, having had a Houdini for a dog at one time who released himself, no matter what you did, he wasn't dangerous, he was just wanting to go for a run. And of course, so for me, it's like I'm thinking, well, those who have those Houdini dogs, that they're not dangerous, they're just flighty. It's enough. just a comment. It's enough.
As they say in the courts, they're a flight risk.
They are flight risk, yes. I had one. You.
Any other comments? Deputy Warden, you had another comment?
Thank you very much. I go along with this, and I will be voting in the positive for this because I have that bit of a problem now myself with a dog new to the area that's running at large at times. And I have been back and forth to the neighbors to tell them to control their animals. So, yes, I think it would be a good deterrent for people. Thank you.
Anybody else? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's carried. Next, 612.
Recommendation report, heritage alteration in Andrews Church. That municipal council refer to the substantial alteration application for the replacement of exterior windows for the St. Andrews Anglican Church, 579 Main Street, Lawrencetown, to that Heritage Advisory Committee.
Is there a seconder for that? Councillor Sheridan seconds. Discussion? Let me say, I had my eyes on that church for a long time. I do deal in old buildings. And so I did notice this summer a couple in there fixing it up. So I stopped in to have a chat. And they're from St. Catharines, Ontario. And the two of them were doing the work themselves, replacing flooring and a ton of work, just a ton of work. I thought the intention was they were going to live there. And so there would be a lot of work to do to, hook up to the sewer if there's sewer there, or put in a kitchen. So there's a ton of work to do. And I'm very pleased because I thought that building would have to be moved if somebody would move it, but it's got that lovely tower, and I don't know how you'd ever move the building and save the tower. So I'm very pleased that they're doing it. I don't see the difficulty myself in changing the windows from the yellow tone to clear myself, as long as they keep the small panes. So I'll be voting in favor of the motion. Councillor Bartel.
That was my question, there was a lack of information. It just says changing the pin on the window clear, but it really didn't say whether they were planning on replacing the whole window or just the glass. And it seems to me just to replace the glass. I'm not sure if that's what their intent would be. I guess I am on the Heritage Committee, so I'll see more about it at that point, but it'd be more useful to council if we had a little more detailed information when these reports come out. I think that if it's just replacing the glass, that's one thing. To talk about replacing the windows and big vinyl ones without the mullions and like, that's a whole different story,
I completely agree with you.
Yeah.
So I was looking, the report comes from the planners. Mr. Dunphy, do you know the answer to that by any chance? Whether you don't, eh?
No, but one of the purposes of the Heritage Advisory Committee is to invite the applicant to show up. But if that's something that's identified as being a deficiency, we can contact them ahead of time and say, you really need to give us a better idea of what the videos are going to look like.
Yeah. Councilor Morrison?
Thank you. This motion is whether we will refer or we will not refer. It's not the function of council to discuss matters that are the property of the Heritage Advisory Committee.
Fair enough. Any other discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion's carried.
Sorry if I got off track of that, but I just wanted,
I did too.
I just thought my opportunity to throw back that maybe we have a little more information when it comes to the committee. Thank you all.
Okay, where are we?
6.13.
Yep.
Recommendation report, discharge, development agreement, Bridgetown. That municipal council discharged the development agreement dated September 18, 1989, or for 54 and 58 Church Street, Bridgetown. PID 05149760 and PID 05149778.
Is there a seconder for that? Councillor Hudson seconds. Discussion? Councillor Ray.
It's more a clarification. It says after 200 days or this is in the origin background. And it says after 200 days of the start or 2 years of the project not finishing, the development agreement would terminate. So I'm curious, what's the difference between the development agreement terminating 20, 30 years ago versus us discharging it?
I had the same question. I read that probably 5 times. And it does say in the report that when the agreement terminates, it doesn't disappear, is the way I took it. Whether that's right or wrong, I'm just telling you what's in the report.
That was kind of what I understood too. I was through you maybe to staff. I thought maybe there's something more for detail. Maybe I'm getting too into the nitty-gritty.
I think the point is that whether it's still there or not, that's before us to make sure that it's not there in the future is the issue. Mr. Dunphy, would you like to respond to that?
Municipal Government Act, when it talks about development agreements, it talks about the ability for a municipality to terminate. Terminate just means terminating approval to construct what is approved under that development agreement. When it's a discharge, it means it's gone completely from the registry. It doesn't apply to the property anymore. The problem with it is when they use this old agreement and they use the terminology about terminate, what also means is that development agreement is still in place, but it locks it into an old development that is not going to be redeveloped. The reasons why the applicants are asking for this now is simply because they want to redevelop the property, but not in what was in, from a very old development agreement. So they're asking council to discharge that development agreement because under the current zoning bylaw, you do not require a development agreement to redevelop it because it's in a residential rehab zone that does not require a development agreement. So the development agreement that's in place is still there because it's not discharged, but it acts as an impediment for him moving ahead to do to rehab that property into 9 units. Thank you.
I do have a question. There's two properties here. There's the one by the road, which is 58, and then there's an old storage, I'll call it, building behind it, which is 54. 58, which is the one you see from the road, was the subject of unsightly and dangerous notices a number of times this year. And I believe it's under new ownership. I'm not sure about that. Mr. Duffy is agreeing with me, who is now intending to refurbish the one by the road. And I drive by there every day, and yes, there's a crew out there working. They've torn it apart. They've gutted it. I'm very positive about it. Hopefully it'll be a good job. I think I read there's going to be 9 residential units, so that's good for our housing issues. It's good. The building at the back is owned by somebody different, and it's ugly. Now the notice, the unsightly premise notice, I believe only went against the building at the front, because that's what you saw from the road. But the building at the back is actually adjacent to the county public works depot, and it's not very pretty. But we're moving ahead, and I read here that the owner of the building at the back has no intention to redevelop the property and keep using it as storage. So I guess that's where we are at the moment, but I thought I'd mention that the one on the front, which was the subject of the unsightly premise notices, is being fixed up as we speak. Any other comments? I'll call for the, Councillor Bartel.
In the photo on Schedule 1, is the one building the top building in the back, is that one not seen in this photo, or is it the one directly to the right there? But it looks like there's no utility poles in the front, so I was thinking that was the street. So there's something, the other one you're talking to is not.
The one on the left is 58. That's the one being renovated. The one you can see the little chimney on it.
Yeah.
The storage building behind it is 54, and that's the one to the right of the picture.
That is the one that's shown, okay.
Yeah. Any other questions before I call for the vote? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion's carried. Just thinking, let me just going to take a minute and look what we're doing here. I think the next few items don't look like they're going to be too long. The Valley Wren might be. How's everybody for taking a break? I'm just going to look around the table. Everybody okay to keep rolling? It's 11 o'clock. We're going to go at least till 12 or 12:30. I see people nodding, so we'll keep going. Okay. Next item, Deputy Warden.
6.15.
6.14.
6.14, okay. Information report of it. Information report, November 2021, community development update, circulated for information.
This was circulated, Council. Are there any questions arising from the community development update? I see no questions, so we'll move along. There's not a,
No motion required.
there's no motion required? Okay, thank you. Next, 6.15.
January date, 6.15. Set January date for special committee of the whole. 3 fire services. Fire services funding, accessibility, and rating date.
So I'm looking at Mr. Dick. Can we deal with all 3 of those in one committee of the whole, do you think? Or should we break it up more? We're going to have another one for Bridgetown.
I think we can do the fire services will take a couple hours, Don? Accessibility will probably take less than that, and Raven Haven could be, yeah, so we're looking at probably 5 hours.
Okay, we'll try one for the 3 topics and another one for Bridgetown. So do people have their calendars with them?
I just happened to have my brand new one that was in my mailbox.
Okay, 2022. Are there any proposals from staff as to a convenient date?
Not the 10th, not the 11th, and not the 18th.
And not the 17th. That's Upper Clements Area Advisory Committee.
I didn't bring my envelope with the figures in it.
Let's see.
Should be after the 6th because that's an accessibility meeting and that's the topic that's included in it.
Yeah, I find the time between the committee of the whole meeting and the council meeting is usually a pretty busy week. So my own sense, unless there's something urgent, I do it after the 18th.
You want to do maybe one on the 25th and the other one on the 26th? Is that too close?
Do back them up?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what my schedule is, but I think those two, it's not wrong.
Anybody else any ideas? Yeah, I think I just as soon do them back to back. And
What days was that?
Councillor Prout suggested the 25th and the 26th.
Sounds good.
Is that okay with everybody? David, is that okay?
Yes.
You sure?
10 o'clock start.
Well, it's January, so I'd like to do a 10 o'clock start if we could. It's still dark in the morning and the weather might be bad. Don't want people driving in the dark.
Might have to be Zoom, we don't know.
That's right, it might be Zoom, yeah. Yeah, it might be Zoom. We'll set I guess time to be determined depending on maybe as we get closer, but we'll call it 10 o'clock now. And we'll do fire services, accessibility in Raven Haven on the 25th. And then we'll do Bridgetown on the 26th. Dunphy, do those dates work for you? Do they conflict with anything?
The consultant is probably going to be asking for somewhere around a half a day in the afternoon to meet with consultants and start talking about the issues with the countywide plan.
Meet with the council?
Meet with council. So he's asking for something like a half a day in the afternoon.
What's the timing for that? Is it urgent?
It's just to get things moving along, yeah.
Yeah, we do need to get things moving along. Do we want to do that on the 27th, council? I think Bridgetown's going to take a full day. Do we want to do it on the 27th? I'm at your leisure.
Does it need to be done before?
Pardon me?
Would he need it done before because he's got to get this rolling, so maybe he needs it earlier?
Do it earlier? I guess there's probably, Mr. Dunphy, there's no real preparation for council for the meeting? No. It's just, okay,
All consultations to you.
so yeah, that's a good idea. Maybe then if we don't have to prepare, then maybe we could, and if we might be doing it by Zoom anyway, maybe we could do it,
About the 12th.
I've got a meeting on the 12th. I think I could do the 13th. You want to try the 13th now? The clerk's busy there. You're busy, aren't you?
That's toasted week for me.
That's bad.
Between committee of the whole.
Yeah.
Although in fairness,
But I don't have to be
yeah,
there.
the responsibility for the clerk would be minimal, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, you may not even have to be there.
yeah. If it's a special committee of the whole, I'll be there, yeah.
So it's a workshop.
Will it be a special committee of the whole?
So it's a workshop.
Yeah, whatever you want to call it, yeah. It's really an information session from Stantec to the council to get some direction as to what the plan is and just to keep council informed.
Yeah, I think it should be public, myself, and if it's public, then it should be a committee of the whole meeting.
Sure.
So that would mean you'd have to attend, is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
What about a little earlier? What about the first week of January? Is that with Albert's?
no, thank you.
It was on the 25th.
We're coming back on a Tuesday to get an agenda out on Thursday for the meeting on Tuesday.
I was just thinking about getting the plan started because
Right.
we need to get rolling on. We can't just keep saying
I
the
agree.
end of the month. So I think the earlier the better.
I really think that if the clerk has to attend, she just has to
Pick the date.
be here, I think, taking minutes. I don't think that's...
And we can always get the deputy clerk to attend that meeting.
Say again?
We can get the deputy clerk to attend that meeting.
Yeah, okay. So we're looking at the 13th then? Does that work for everybody?
Afternoon.
Yeah, afternoon, I guess, yeah. Either morning, let's leave it date to be,
I think he preferred the afternoon, right? Yeah.
okay, afternoon. So when does that start? 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock?
1.
1 o'clock? So 1 o'clock on the 13th, and that'll be Stantec. And right now, the odds are it's going to be a Zoom.
Oh, ye of a little faith.
Okay, so just to recap, on the Thursday the 13th at 1 o'clock, we're having a meeting with the consultants with respect to the countywide plan. On the 25th, we're doing a committee of the whole, fire services, accessibility in Raven Haven. On the 26th, we're doing a committee of the whole on the Bridgetown community rate.
Could I say something on the Bridgetown meeting?
Sure.
For those of us who probably have not grasped either the extent or the detail of the question, that folks who are preparing the materials for that meeting, if they could be as concise and exact and as clear as possible as to what the purpose is.
I agree with you, and to respond to that, Councillor Morrison, to me the most important document, it wasn't included in the previous material we got. It's about a 4-page document, and it sets out the community, all the different factors that lead into the Bridgetown community rate. It's about 4 pages, and what I myself would intend to do is to go through all those factors and have council decide, is that something we want to keep in the Bridgetown rate? And I can tell you the first quarter of it pretty well disappears because it's all the stuff that related to the building in Bridgetown. The photocopier, the heat, the lights for the building, the staff. There was an allocation of staff that was there. They're no longer there. So to me, for example, that would come out. And I would go through, like the public works, and one of the big issues, all the public works in Bridgetown are all allocated to the Bridgetown rate. And to me now, in talking to the CEO, there's going to be a moving together of our public works departments in the county. So the issue for council will be whether that comes. So that's what I see happening, and the important document to me, and I second your view. Everybody needs to have a copy of that document before the meeting.
Thank you.
Where are we? Okay. Next is 6.16, Arlington Waterkeepers. I can tell you that I've had email communications with Mr. McCurdy, and he would like to move this to the January meeting because the waterkeepers wish to make a presentation. And I have communicated with him and told him the drill of making a presentation. And he needs to contact the clerk and and give some background information. Councillor Cotw.
I would like to have the environment do the same, because I'm not going to believe a citizen against what approvals has been put by the government. If the approvals on that property we have no jurisdiction over, I want to know that. I'm not going to take the word of somebody that's just fighting for the fact that it's being closed. So they can come in and make a presentation, but I'll be very upset if we make any effort on doing any direction until we find out where we stand with environment on that piece of property, what those permits mean, what jurisdiction do we have to contradict those permits, if any. So I'd like to have the ones that issued the permits come into this council chambers and request for them to come in.
All right, well, let me respond in some detail then to your comment. And I'll invite Mr. Dick to correct me if I get it wrong, because I'm going by memory, but it goes back to a decision in the Court of Appeal in Nova Scotia, in Colchester, about 2 years ago, where the Court of Appeal ruled that the county had the ability to determine where asbestos would be deposited in their county. The county lost a trial because it was deemed to be a planning decision and they didn't go through the right process. In the Court of Appeal, they said that municipalities do have the ability to deal with waste. And they felt that this bylaw saying you could only deposit asbestos in one place, which happened to be owned by the county, was a valid bylaw. So the water keepers are aware of this decision. So they wrote to I'd say us, I'm the councillor for the area, asking if this decision would apply to the county to allow the municipality to control somehow the asbestos at the Arlington Heights site, and whether the my immediate view as a councillor to them was that it wouldn't, because in Colchester, I'm getting into the weeds here, the bylaw came in before the applicant for the asbestos plant got a site. And my view was that Arlington's grandfathered because it's been there so long. So that was, as a councillor, that was my response to my resident. That then came up to staff, and so the water keepers came back and they said, well, if they're grandfathered, can we control the size of any expansion? Interesting legal question. I again volunteered my thoughts was that no, that's provincial jurisdiction. They've got a permit, it's up to the province. So then the water keepers contacted an eco-justice people to get a legal opinion on it, and then the legal people wrote to us, if I'm getting it right so far, and said they don't want to give a legal opinion if the county's going to get a legal opinion. And Mr. Dick's view, representing staff, is the same as mine, that on the face of it, our view is that it's provincial jurisdiction. And so we were not inclined to spend our money to get a legal opinion just because a resident wanted us to. That was where we were. But I see no difficulty in the water keepers. In fact, I would encourage the water keepers to come and make a presentation to council. It's been a long-standing issue in my constituency, and I would be quite happy to have it aired here and hear from them. So I'm all in favor of them coming to make a presentation, but I thought I'd give you that background.
But I'm not disagreeing with you. But pits and quarries is the same thing. We argued in this council chambers many times about pits and quarries. And when we went to the Supreme Court said municipalities have no jurisdiction over pits and quarries. If the provincial government put a development of a pit and quarry and right here beside our building, we have no jurisdiction over that.
I think the issue...
That's the issue I'm having is that if Nova Scotia Environment has issued them permits, where do we stand on being able to put restrictions against those permits? on those piece of properties. Piece of properties other than those, I certainly would like to hear the concerned citizens. But if Nova Scotia Environment comes in here and says, no, we've issued the permits, they're following the permits, these are grandfathered because we've already given it to them, why are we wasting our time and effort trying to fight something that we got no control over? Outside properties, I'm 100% with you. If we can zone so they can't extend over and onto another piece of property, they have no permit for it today. But I'd still like to know from the horse's mouth.
I think what is, first of all, are you suggesting you don't want to hear from them? Are you going to vote against?
I'm going to vote against them. They
No, but
several letters.
do you not want them to come and speak to council?
Not ahead of knowing where we stand.
I think what it's going to come down to is whether or not we're going to get a legal opinion ourselves. I think that'll be the question. Right now, David, Mr. Dick and I are of the view that we feel comfortable enough, we don't want to, but that'll be a decision of council after hearing the presentation.
And I'm not asking for a legal opinion either. I'm asking for this, for the Department of Environment, tell us if we have any jurisdiction over their permitted properties they have put permits on.
Okay, well, the issue today is simply that they're going to ask to come and see us and make a presentation, and as far as I'm concerned, any group of citizens that want to do that should be, unless there's some reason not to do it, we should hear them, so.
If I can comment on this point, there are 4 groups waiting to make presentations to council that the clerk has told them no, because council hasn't decided if they want physical people coming in to present yet, because we're still under a state of emergency with the province. So if council is deciding they want physical presentations, I can also address the other 4 groups and start booking them in if that's what council wants to do.
Well, this would likely be on Zoom, so.
Now it might likely be on Zoom, but until yesterday it was going to be in person.
So sure, please do contact them. We don't want to hold people up. You know, if people are waiting to see us, that's our job to accommodate them.
No, and that was my question is because I've read the emails that's been sent to us, and some of it is not correct. That's the problem I'm having is that the emails that were sent to us personally had misinformation in them. So when they come to council to do a presentation and there's misinformation in it, it makes for bad taste in a mouth. That's all I'm saying is that why wouldn't we have who has the authority come first so we know that we can say, whoa, no, that's not what we've been told by the ones that's issued the permits. Because that's some of the problem we've had with the Albert Rice thing. Is that I've sat on this council since November, and we've never, ever, we still don't know if we can get a permit for that property. We've never talked to them.
I think we're getting a little off track here, I have to say, Councillor Cotw.
Well, I think it's an issue.
I really do. I think, you know, I think if a citizens group wants to come and present to us, they can. If you have difficulty with what they say,
I'll speak up.
I can guess.
They can like it or love it, I'll speak up.
Okay. So,
I would call them out.
So basically, this is for discussion. All I'm saying is that there will be, my understanding today is that the water keepers are going to apply to make a presentation to us in January, and we'll just wait for that to happen.
Because this group doesn't make decisions during a presentation or when a presentation.
Right. They're just going to make a presentation. Councillor Bartow, did you want to pick up on this?
Yeah, just some of the comments that were made in whether we move ahead or not. I think there's still a lot of research to be done and information to flow. Just to make it quick and to the point is where we talked about previously permitted and it's under the provincial jurisdiction or whatever. And there was some commentary as to increasing the area of a landfill. I think that if a permit is issued on property, it's for that designated property boundaries. I don't think that the permit necessarily would should not automatically extend, and that's where it might be a little different, that we would have some input into it if they wanted to add onto the property and expand that and include that. I think we would have the right at that point to limit what was happening on any expansion if we don't have that already related to the existing permits, which are provided by the province.
Well, this will be for discussion when this comes before council. Deputy Warden, did you want to say something? We're off topic, but did you?
Well, I'll go right back on topic. Thanks very much. Thank you. And my question is, when we try to put a transfer station in the county on our own property, one thing and another, we were required to have a public meeting. And they wouldn't allow a Zoom call to be a public meeting, and that's where we got into that whole problem with a lot of it. And so, did the government actually have a public meeting before they issued permits, or were they required? And to follow up with Councillor Cotw, I would encourage the Department of Environment to come before council and answer some questions. Yes, I would. Thank you very much.
Well, maybe that'll be the outcome of after hearing. This is only going to be a presentation from the water keepers. There's not, as far as I know, there's not even going to be a motion before council. They're just coming to talk to us, as far as I know today.
Yep.
Okay.
Good. Well, I'm all for it.
There's no motion. It's just for discussion. So the next item is 6.17. And this is the Valley Wren. Membership of the Valley Wren. Now, was there a...
There's nothing in there.
There's nothing.
For discussion.
What's the number?
There's nothing included.
There's nothing in our package.
What's the price?
Hold on just a second.
Oh, you don't want to go there?
Well, no, that's... I just have to think, there's nothing in the package, so I have to just conceive first how we're going to deal with this, okay? So...
If I may,
Sure.
Based on our discussions a couple of weeks ago, for both this issue and the previous issue, I've written letters to both the, whatever the other group is called, and the draft letter that I wrote to that group was that it's a provincial responsibility, not ours. Similarly with Wren, the response that I wrote to Valley Wren was that at this point in time, we're not interested in participating for a number of reasons. One of them is it's too close to budget season that if we were to consider it, we would wait until April at that time. So I said we would be probably not making a decision for 5 to 6 months.
Perfect.
So are you suggesting we put this off for a few months, this discussion?
I'll send off the draft letter, that letter that I wrote to them, that we wouldn't be doing anything because we do need to respond to them. But that's essentially what the letter said, yes.
Excellent.
Well, there's no motion here, but I think since it's on our agenda, would someone like to move that we put this, table this? Would that be the thing to do and bring it back when you feel it's...
Well, I have to send the letter off, and I guess it's an issue. Is it a council decision to participate in Valley Wren? Or is it a CAO decision? And my view is it's council's got to make the decision whether we participate.
Right.
So my suggestion is the letter that I'm writing says that we're not going to participate for the next 5 to 6 months. And we will consider it at budget time. That's what the correspondence is.
That's perfect.
So you say a draft correspondence?
Well, I've got it ready. It was just,
Yeah.
I quite frankly, I thought that we sent it to council. I thought I sent it to council last week for their view, but maybe it didn't get out.
No, I don't think I...
It wasn't to be part of the agenda, it was just to be an information report to council. So I can get that sent out today, but that's really what the direction is.
So the CAO is suggesting that we move this issue approximate to budget time in 2022.
Yeah.
Is that agreeable? Yep. So perhaps for the record, we could have a motion that this matter be moved forward approximate to budget time to come back before council. Would somebody make that motion?
Yeah.
Moved by the Deputy Warden, seconded by Councillor LeBlanc.
So this is really the table.
Well, I think I'd like to, rather than table it, mention that it would come back so that the Valley Ren people know that it's not going to be just tabled, it's going
So
to come back.
when do you want? You can table it and then you'll tell me when you want to bring it off the table?
No, but
Part of the budget process.
Specify.
Part of the
Approximate to the
23 budget.
Yeah. Any further discussion?
So what
Councilor Ren?
month is that, man? Sorry.
That's all right. So, speaking to familiar topics today, when this does come back, I would really like it if staff could discuss how this ties into our master plan, our strategic plan, and our economic development plan.
And a recreational plan.
Yeah, well, this one might not be the recreational plan so much, but yes.
We have a funny elf.
Any other comments? Any other comments? So the motion on the floor, do you want to read what you've got there?
It was moved by Deputy Warden Gunn, seconded by Councillor LeBlanc to table this matter to the budget process.
I think I'd say approximate to the budget.
Why don't we put a month in?
No, let's put approximate. This is what I'm taking from.
I don't know when the budget's going to be presented. I'd love to say a month, but
Let's just say
April.
approximate
April.
to the budget process.
He's saying April
Okay.
now.
All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion's carried. Thank you. Meeting times, what's that?
What time do you want committee of the whole to start? Because we've moved in and out of 9 o'clock in the morning, so this group should decide what time they want meetings to start. The last council had a motion to start committee of the whole for the winter months of December, January, February, March, to move it to a later start time at 10 o'clock. So that should have started this month. When I sent out the meeting notices, it was noted that I had 9 o'clock. That was because we're adding on another meeting today. And the earlier start was to get you home before dark. So this council may decide what start times they want the meetings. I cannot make that decision.
Well, let me suggest if it's Zoom, it's 9 o'clock, and if it's in person, it's 10 o'clock.
Yeah.
Perfect.
That sounds good.
That's
Sounds good.
Okay.
committee of the whole.
Committee of the whole, yeah. For the months of January, February, March.
yes.
Ever, it sounds like.
Yeah.
No,
Councillor Cotw, what do you want to say?
January, February, March.
What did I say?
No, but she said it sounds like forever.
No, I didn't need the clarity.
Yeah.
So-
January, February, March, if it's Zoom, it's 9 o'clock, if it's in person, it's 10.
So moving forward, will be December, January, February, and March.
Yes.
We'll start at 9 if it's by Zoom, 10 if it's in person.
Correct.
Thank you.
Mr. Ward, can I make a comment?
Yes.
I'm going to throw something out there, and I don't expect council to respond to it, but I want to know if council would consider changing our council meetings from the Tuesday following committee to maybe the next Tuesday. And I ask that in deference to Carolyn has to work her behind off for a period of like really difficult work for 10 days. And the normal course of council meetings, it should be, most of the items should be by consent, so it should be relatively quick meeting. But putting them, both marry them together, it makes it really difficult for staff to try to get things done for that second meeting. So it's really part of a procedural bylaw, more so than me asking this permission. But I'd like council to consider maybe moving the second meeting to maybe the second Tuesday. And my preference would be, if you want to get community engagement, maybe even at a different hour than early in the morning, if you wanted the community to be engaged in it, then I don't know what that's going to be. So it's just really food for thought, and I think there's some procedural things that we should probably consider. That one, to me, is probably a good one. Having two meetings together in a short time frame doesn't give staff a lot of time to do things for the council meeting if it needs to be done.
Okay, well, we'll discuss that.
And just food for thought.
Yeah, thank you for that. Next is the CAO monthly report. And we have it in front of us, a written report. Is there anything you'd like to add, Mr. Dick?
I will add, I met with Jason Hahn, I think, post me bulletproofing these things, last Thursday or Friday, Thursday, I think. And it's the first official meeting that I had with Jason. And I will say that one of the questions I asked was, how is the province, what's the province's opinion about the county now relative to what it may have been? And he is extremely, and they are extremely excited about where council is going. He said, I'm going to paraphrase what he said, when we talk about Annapolis County now, we're giddy. Whereas maybe the previous years they were cringing. So they're very excited about what this council has been doing since, basically since last November. So I just wanted to pass that information on. It's the first time I've actually met him. So I'm going to try to meet him on a more regular basis and have him meet with staff to talk about things of staff interest. So he's happy to do that. It's just that we haven't met. I've been here since May and it's really the first time I've met him. So that's in addition to this few items that I've got listed here.
I have a question, Mr. Dick. Here, near the bottom, there's references to the cleanup of the former Upper Clements Park. What can you advise council and the public about where we are without actually getting into anything about contract negotiations or anything? But can you tell us where we are?
I can give you some detail. The competition closed last Monday. We had a mandatory site visit. 12 different firms showed up, 5 of whom have responded. So we've got a detailed review process where we're weighting the various components of the RFP, and we've separated the value that they're providing to us in terms of the dollars. We haven't looked at that yet, so there's a team of 4 people that have reviewed that. I think I can't give you specific details, but there's a couple of very strong, what we deem to be very strong responses. I will probably get a chance to look at that sometime in early January. So my request is that that group meets and physically goes through all the non-price components of it to make sure we've hit all the key bullets. And then in January, hopefully we will meet as a group, and then I can bring something back to council and the committee of the whole. I will say that a couple of the responses are the way we structured it is to try to save some of the existing buildings, and some of the responses are actually in fact saying that we don't need to demolish everything. They could save some of those buildings. I haven't looked at the responses yet, but I suspect I will be either late this week or early January. So that's where we are. Hopefully we'll have a response back in mid-January.
Councillor Cotw.
Thank you. I see the internet is on here, and we all read Councillor Bartow's comments on the state of the current situation, and I myself have received more than one call, but one call within the last 4 or 5 days. Very disappointed in the current status, and I wonder if there's anything you can share with us at this time.
I can give you some details in the in-camera session.
Yes,
but I do have a conference call with Seaside Rogers Thursday afternoon at 2 to talk to these specific issues.
Thank you. I think that would be well appreciated by many residents in all of our districts.
I think I can add a little bit to that. When Mr. Dick and I spent the day together yesterday, as you'll hear later, dealing with the YMCA mediation, and during the course of that, I called Dean Abbas, who is the person in charge of this for Seaside, and he told us that there's 151 people hooked up at the moment, and the anticipated amount was 3,000 to 3,500. And Mr. Dick and I didn't think that was very good progress, which we communicated to Mr. Abbas. I can't really recall too much more, but I will say that in order to facilitate communications, Mr. Abbas gave us his cell phone number, which I will be sending out to all councillors, so that if, and he invited me, he said send it to all the councillors. You better believe I will do it. So that if residents have concerns with the internet, then you will have a direct contact to Seaside.
So you're saying we could give that to residents?
I
No, I didn't, I wasn't sure, that was kind of a gray area in your
Just
response.
to the counselors.
It could be a great Christmas gift to your, if that's what you want.
Whoops, and online.
Let's see, what else? I see some of this other stuff is contract negotiations, so we'll leave it for in camera. Councilor Bartel?
Just wondering where we sat with the CAO review committee.
Yeah, I've spoken to the clerk, and I have picked her as the person to draw the lots. So I anticipated that tonight I would send an email to everybody if they expressing their intention, whether they want to be on the committee. Send an email to the clerk and to me. And then when I'm in signing checks next week, I would probably find a hat and the clerk and do the draw.
I'm not here next week.
Oh,
Just
well, maybe I'll pick somebody else.
I'm not here after Friday.
Are you? Okay, well, I'll deputize some other staff person to do the draw.
No, my concern is approaching a year and we haven't done any yet. And we talked about maybe doing the possibility of a couple.
Yeah, that's where we are, and so we should have the committee picked before Christmas, and then probably, maybe at the committee of the whole or council meeting in January, we'll have the session where we all
I got a correspondence back from Louis, which had other issues, but in the same one, he said, well, I assume that you've done a couple of reviews of CA. I wasn't going to get back to him and say, no, I haven't gone there yet.
So that's where we are.
Okay, next.
Next, anything else for Mr. Dick? Any other questions at all about anything? No?
Go, keep it up.
Okay, next is the warden's report. Bear with me while I try and get my notes here.
Take it short.
Okay, for the past number of weeks, I've worked on the brief and reply brief on the YMCA mediation. And I apologize. I worked on the brief and the reply brief on the YMCA mediation, and I attended at the mediation yesterday. And because of the fact that the next step requires discussions with council, I can't report today publicly as to where we are, but I will at the in-camera meeting, and perhaps we'll make that public after that. I had dinner with Mr. Dick and the mayors and CAOs of Annapolis Royal and Middleton at the station a few weeks ago, and that was a good chance for all of us to get to know each other better. I attended a Zoom meeting with mayors and wardens and the Minister of Municipal Affairs, where the minister was talking about recent issues relating to municipalities. I met with the lawyers in Halifax. I attended an IMSA meeting in Kings County Council chambers regarding the pilot project with respect to Valley Waste and Kings Transit. I attended the Zoom conference on governance that a number of others here at council did. I had a lunch with Mayor Matart to discuss common issues, and I intend to do that with most of the other mayors in the IMSA group, because I think it's important to establish personal relationships with people if you're working as a group. I chaired the Bridgetown Town Meeting. There were about 50 people there. I've reported to council. I think everybody found the night to be very positive, a very good thing to do, and I look forward, if we can, to having other town hall meetings like that in different parts of the county. And then, as usual, I met with staff and signed checks and dealt with other matters during the last month. Any questions about any of that? Councillor Collins?
You shouldn't be calling them town meetings. They're personal meetings with councilors and their constituents. That was not a meeting approved by this council. And I was disappointed when you suggested the CAO should be there, because that didn't go through council either. He's our employee. And anytime a request comes in that he's to go to a meeting, should go through this council. So that meeting in Bridgetown was a good meeting. There were some other issues, but it was a good meeting to hear from the residents, but that was solely councillor constituents meeting. It was not a sanctioned meeting by this council.
Okay, so you're saying, just so I can understand what you're saying, and I apologize if I did something out of line, but you're saying that if any councillors are going to have town hall meetings with residents of an area like Bridgetown, or if you wanted to have one in Margarettsville, that it would come first to council. Council would approve to have the meeting, and then so that the CAO could go, because otherwise the CAO wouldn't go. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, because we didn't offer anything to Alex when we did a bunch of stuff in Cornwallis. He is council's employee.
Okay,
He's not individual employees.
All I'm saying, so next time, if there's going to be some kind of, say we have a meeting in Cornwallis, okay, so you're saying that the council should approve it. It's difficult to have a town hall meeting without stepping there, in my own view, because often there's questions that come from the public.
And I'm not saying that.
Okay.
But if Alex wanted to have a meeting, which I'm sure he did, about issues in Cornwallis Park, he held them as a councillor of Cornwallis area.
Yeah.
When I go to Margarettsville and I have a meeting, it's me with my constituents. If you're gonna call it something that's allude to that it's part of council, it has to come through council.
Well, fair enough. If that's the process, I apologize, I didn't know about it. This particular matter, as you know, dealt with county matters, not just local matters. It dealt with selling a building owned by the county, 2 buildings owned by the county. It dealt with taxation.
It doesn't matter.
Okay, fair enough, but I'm telling
If
you.
you're gonna involve the county and our staff, it has to come through this jurisdiction. If you're gonna have a councillor constituent meeting, have as many as you want. I go to meetings in Margarettsville all the time when we talk about stuff that Margarettsville would like to have.
Okay.
If you think staff should be there, it definitely should come through this council.
Fair enough.
That's all I'm saying.
Okay. Any other questions?
I think, everyone might want to get his pencil up. I didn't know if he had a question.
No, I don't think so.
He's thinking.
Okay, seeing none, I'll move along to the next matter. The TCTS report. You've had the report circulated. Any questions for Councilor Cotw?
There won't be one in the next meeting because we don't meet in December, so when January rolls around, you won't have one. So just for in advance, let you know.
I don't see any questions. So we'll move along to the King's Transit report. Any questions for Councillor LeBlanc, or if she'd like to add anything to the report?
Pass it on to the warden, he's gonna have to be busy. Pass it on.
I don't see any comments or questions. I don't see any hands up. Am I correct that concludes the public portion of the committee of the whole meeting?
Yes.
So I'll ask for a motion to go into in camera. And in camera we have for contract negotiations and litigation or potential litigation according to Section 22 of the Municipal Government Act. Someone make that motion. Councillor Sheridan moves, seconded by Councillor LeBlanc. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's carried. We're back at the Committee of the Whole meeting on Tuesday, December the 14th. We've just come out of the in-camera portion. We're going to amend the order of the day. I'll ask for a motion amending it to deal with the YMCA matter. Moved by Councillor LeBlanc, seconded by Councillor Longmire. Is there any discussion on changing the order of the day? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's carried. So I ask that the motion is that I'll ask someone to move is to recommend that Municipal Council approve the payment of $65,000 in settlement of all claims with the YMCA Lunenburg. Is there a seconder to that? Seconded by Councillor Morrison. Councillor Longmire moved, seconded by Councillor Morrison. I'll just make a few statements about this. As people know, because we could no longer have insurance on the Basin View Center building, we had to close it down on June the 17th of this year. The YMCA had been in that building for 8 or 9, maybe 10 years, and had a long-standing relationship with the county in that regard. The county over the years had picked up the deficit that the YMCA was operating under. After the building was closed down, some disputes arose between the YMCA and the county with respect to our respective positions, and a mediation was held yesterday among the parties, and it was agreed that the matter all claims would be resolved upon payment to the YMCA by the county of $65,000. Any questions or comments with respect to the motion on the floor? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion's carried. Thank you. Is there any other business to conduct in the Committee of the Whole meeting today? No. Now I'll ask for a motion to adjourn. Moved by Councillor Sheridan, seconded by the Deputy Warden. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion's carried.